This is the Page Publishing Book Club. Good evening. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini, along with my engineer, Rob Barrett. And Rob, have we got a show for you tonight? We are going to start off with an author who was involved in some stories that, Rob, I'm sure you remember. Certainly a lot of New Yorkers know all too well. It goes like this. His name is Ahmad Salem, and he will tell you that the 1990 murder of extremist Rabbi Meir Kahane at a motel on Lexington Avenue right here in New York City by the Egyptian-born El Said Nosser, who was working as a security guard in Midtown, was the first strike in the U.S. by a terror network later known as Al-Qaeda. He will also tell you that he infiltrated a group of Nosser's supporters for the FBI and became head of security for Omar Abdel Rahman. He was known as the Blind Sheikh. Rahman led the terror cell that was responsible for the World Trade Center bombing in 1993, a terrorist act the FBI wasn't able to stop. Salem later became part of the same terror cell that planned to bomb New York City landmarks and helped bring charges against those involved, including Rahman, the Blind Sheikh. He then went into the witness protection program and literally dropped off the face of the earth for like 20 years until he wrote a book called Undercover. And now, through Page Publishing Book Club, he's written a book called On the Run. Ahmad, welcome. Tell us about your book.
On the Run, talking about my family and my life on the run after finishing the testimony, putting away these 12 evildoers and the Blind Sheikh. Thank God they are in federal prison right now, but I have to live under assumed identity. Every time the Al-Qaeda people come close to where I am, because they are digging really hard, I have to change identity in the witness protection program. So far, I had changed my identity 14 times. And that is not an easy way of living, but if you ask me, it's worth it. For the magnitude of 5 bombs goes in Manhattan and how many thousands of people could have get killed. I think for me to live on the run with my family, as hard as it is, but I thank God that we are still safe and we are still alive.
I'm surprised you worked for the federal government.
Yes.
And they don't mind you writing these books?
No, they don't, because whatever in these books is not a secret. Everything is being revealed in a court of law, and it's a public knowledge. I did not reveal anything could hurt any ongoing investigation or could damage any FBI secrets, because I have no secrets with the FBI.
What is your feeling on ISIS?
Well, ISIS is the extension in the ideology of Al-Qaeda. At this time, Al-Qaeda and ISIS are rivals. They are not working together. They are working against each other. Everybody wanted to prove their existence in the evil procedure they are carrying on. But I'm afraid that if the Blind Sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman get released, as I see some signs of that, he will be the only one able to unite ISIS and Al-Qaeda, because he is the prince, the elected prince of jihad. And if he were able to do that, we're going to have a terrible, terrible war on terror. It's not only ISIS, we're going to have to fight both fronts, Al-Qaeda and ISIS as well.
What are the chances of Rahman getting out of prison?
Well, at this time, a year ago, he was about, the State Department announced that he is about to be transferred. When President Morsi, the former president of Egypt, requested from President Obama to release him. And then when I went to New York and I made some interviews and I did raise up my voice as much as I could, they retracted what they call it release, and they said we might transfer him. And then they stopped doing that for a while. And then finally we find that he is no longer in prison. He went now into a hospital in Colorado, and you can corroborate that. And our president sadly keep releasing terrorists every day, if it's from Guantanamo Guantanamo Bay, is the Taliban leaders, and by releasing the Sheikh from prison, putting him in a hospital to comfort him, I think this is the first step of his release either to Qatar or to Turkey. That will be a big, big mistake. We're going to pay for that hefty mistake later on after he leaves office.
Ahmad, I hope this is not the case. That's all I can say. I want to thank you for sharing your story through Page Publishing. And I just have to know one more thing before I let you go. Do you have any regrets living on the run? I mean, having changed your identity, even undergoing plastic surgery, was it worth it?
You know what? I think I did what I need to do. I'm an American citizen, despite the fact I immigrated to this country 30 years ago, but I chose to live in America, and I will do whatever it takes to protect my America.
There have been a lot of books written about Vietnam, but Jim Squadrito decided to share his experience for one reason: to help other vets. He wrote Dance of the Chameleon, a Vietnam medic story. And Jim, what I find really interesting is what brought you to the point where you were compelled to write this book.
Well, when I first, in the beginning, I was a scholar athlete at a university back in Rhode Island. And I thought I had, the world in the palm of my hands. And all of a sudden I see myself in the front lines of Vietnam. I was only a 21-year-old kid. And I saw things out there that I never thought I'd see ever. They made me a combat medic. And I think the reason for that is my dad was a combat medic in World War II. Maybe they saw that. And also I had some part-time jobs in hospitals, doing autopsies, working my way through college for spending money. But when I returned from Vietnam after seeing the horrors, I had Agent Orange, PTSD, and I was borderline suicidal. And if I didn't tell the story or get it off of my chest, I probably wouldn't be here today. Some therapists said, write what you see, get it off your mind and your chest. So 46 years ago, basically I wrote my memoirs just to get a catharsis for myself. So that's the reason for the book. Now, it laid in a file cabinet for 40-something years. And I had happened to be on a couple of boards of directors with a young woman who was the first woman ever elected Attorney General by any state in the history of the United States. And she had written several books. And while we were having a board meeting at the break, she asked me if I ever wrote anything. And I said, well, I did over 40-something years ago, but my wife probably threw it away. I went back home and I found it in the back of a file cabinet, and I gave it to her, and it was hundreds of pages. And she called me several weeks later and said, this is a story that has to be told. So that's all how it happened.
Well, I also see that you talk about these experiences with other Vietnam soldiers at vets gatherings.
Right. I do a lot of volunteer work at hospitals. I help out with the VA, and I do talks to groups about my experiences.
So are you taking this book with you when you go and talk to these veterans groups?
But it's amazing that the book is selling very, very well. It's only been available the last couple of months, and it's selling crazy. And I'm getting a lot of calls and emails from people saying that it helped them, because it's not a war novel. And when you read the book, it's a spiritual journey of a young man who went through things he never thought he'd see in life. And so when you finish the book, you kind of get a feeling that there's something else there. There's some spiritual things when I came back from Vietnam. There's some spiritual things that happened to me while I was in Vietnam. I saw visions, and you can believe it or not, but it did happen to me. I believe that I have a guardian angel that brought me through all of that. So people have called me and said they were at their lowest point, and this book kind of lifted them up and put meaning back into their lives. So it's that kind of thing. We have some people looking at it as a potential movie project only because they think it's going to help returning veterans to put their lives back together, and even regular people who think they're at their lowest. And when I came back from Vietnam, I was at my lowest. Was able to somehow get back on my feet.
Well, it sounds like you have a guardian angel now.
I do, and uh, besides my wife, I have another one. Yes,
Yeah.
she's another one of my guardian angels.
Our next author, Michael Davidson, has written 5 books, but after being kicked around by the big bad publishing world, he found Page and wrote a real thriller. It's called The Mad Thing. Michael, is the Mad Thing a mad woman?
It's atypical, and it's an unorthodox serial killer. Takes place in Los Angeles, and it's built around Los Angeles Department of Children and Family Services, which I worked for as a child abuse investigator. And my idea for a plot came from my experiences not only as an investigator, but as a psychotherapist. And it just happens that our protagonist is a psychotherapist. So yeah, I wrote about what I know, and a lot of my experiences are in the books, although they're dramatized. You know, it's a very serious topic. But as a first-time writer, you don't really know what your style is or anything. But after writing 5 books, I found out that I have kind of a humorous part of me that I put into very serious subjects. So it's kind of light, although there's physical mutilation in it, but people that have read it don't come away thinking like it was a terrible, horrible thing. It's just, I don't know, it's just the way I write.
Now, you write a self-appointed vigilante roams the streets of Los Angeles, hunting, killing, and mutilating men who have but one tortured behavior in common.
I gave it away, didn't I?
I don't know. It's like
well,
something.
The tortured behavior, you know, they got I can use the word hard on for men who kill and sexually abuse little girls.
So your serial killer is killing people who deserve to die.
Well, that's why I let her go at the end.
Oh, don't tell us how it ends. Do not tell me how it ends. All right. So now what?
I wrote that book 17 years ago.
Oh.
And I tried to move it in publishing houses for almost 10 years, and I got so disturbed with writing that, I went off and wrote a biography, and it took me a long time, several years. And finally I discovered online publishing, and I thought, well, I'll give it a shot. So that's what I did. But, a friend of mine does the covers, and our feeling about it was that we've both been rejected for so many years that we just wanted to have fun and get a story and a book cover out there between covers and have fun with it. We didn't expect it to really sell a lot of books, but it's there if people want to look it up and read it. And Page Publishing has done a wonderful job of it. It's a terrific little book, the way they put it together, and they're really a great company to work with. I was really surprised how easy they are to work with and how efficient they are. So we're just having a good time doing it. And as long as we can keep financing them, we're going to publish as many books as we can.
All right, Michael, sounds like a plan. Christine Kotlowski went on a journey without even realizing it, and she writes about it in her book entitled, My Mom's Gone, Now What? Christine.
I did. I didn't realize that I was on a journey until probably about 10 years later, because, after the clearing and after you give it time, you realize where you've been, and you just live day to day for a little unconsciously.
It's a shock, too. I mean, your mom was 62 years old, you said?
Yep, she was 62, and she had open heart surgery when she was 54, so we knew that, she wasn't as healthy as maybe another 62-year-old person would be, but she just really never let on about any of her pain and her just daily living challenges. She was a very petite woman, so you looked at her, she looked beautiful, healthy, she was always energetic, and you wouldn't think that she was slowly dying of coronary heart disease, but it was taking over her life. And so when she passed, it was during a heart catheterization, so it was very unexpected. We had prepared ourselves for future, open heart surgeries, bypass surgeries, but the routine procedure, I guess, was the shock because there was no closure, no goodbyes. It was just, she was gone.
So what happened to you?
We were at a time where we had just had our first son, and he was 2 months old, and we started our first business, which was a car-related business. And then my grandma died, and then we had 2 more children, and we moved 6 times in 7 years. We just went on this treadmill of living a very busy life. So I started the Day Spa Salon about 4 years after my mom had passed. And it was a wonderful business. I threw myself into it, and I realized I was taking care of everyone else, but I wasn't taking care of myself. So I was fortunate enough to sell the Day Spa salon, and that's when I decided, it was about 10 years after she had passed, that I needed to get myself on track. And I had journaled my thoughts and just my sadness for years. And so when I pulled out all of those notes, I realized that there was something maybe there that I could share with our children because they didn't have the opportunity to meet my mom. And so I started just compiling all my notes and positive quotes, and it became a short little project that I shared with some friends, and they encouraged me to they can do something with it to help others. And that's really why I did. It's this book and the 4 a.m.s that I was sitting up unable to sleep, putting it together. If it helps one person, it will be all worth it. It was my way of getting myself together. And I looked at all these little pieces of paper with my journals and where I was at, and I needed to pull them together to get myself together. And it was like putting a puzzle together. And after I thought about where my loss was and how long it took me to just come to grips with losing her, I realized there were definite steps in the process of healing. And I do put that in the book, that it's enduring suffering and loss, and then learning to survive and then thriving after it. And I read a quote this past week that said, when you can talk about your loss and you don't cry, you are on your way to healing. And you never forget the person the loss is always there, but you just lead a different life.
All right. With that, we are going to take a quick break. Coming up, Chaos in the Classroom, King Pettigrew, and Santa's Christmas Tales. Right after this.
Attention all authors. Page Publishing is looking for authors. Have you written a book and want to get it published? Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, Apple iTunes, and other outlets. They handle all aspects of the publishing process for you: printing, cover art, publicity, copyright, and editing. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. That's 800-204-6099 for your free author submission kit.
Welcome back to the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Rob Barrett's my engineer. Brenda Moran has published 3 books with Page Publishing, and every chapter in every book details her experience with a special ed student. Her latest book is called Chaos in the Classroom 3.
This book is about a special education student, and every chapter is about one student, on explaining what they were like, how they acted, and what I did with that situation. One of my most interesting students was a gal that I had in a care situation, care meaning children at risk educationally. And she was from a very interesting home that I actually did home visit. And I think that for me, working with a student, because she had so many behavior issues that, I would have to contact the father. And when I went to the home, it was just so overwhelming to actually experience that type of home life and to see, oh my goodness, maybe that's one of the many issues that she has when she comes to school.
Is what she's leaving.
Correct. And what she went back to. I mean, every night, like I always said that, I gave them 6 hours of my time of, a structured environment for them to learn. But to actually, go to her house, it was so overwhelming for me that the next time I saw her and worked with her, my empathy was more there than the frustration.
And there's not a whole lot you can do about their home life.
No, just work with the parent that I was working with and make sure that she was on her medication, because at the very beginning of the year, she would just come to school with no medication and just off the wall and throw things and hit people and, go after me and oh my goodness. And then finally, when I talked to the father, he goes, well, she wasn't on it all summer. Well, that is your choice, all summer. She's not a classroom. But now we need to, make sure that that she is learning the best learning environment for her.
I mean, it just sounds to me like every kid is different. Every kid is so different,
Yes, that is so true.
It's not like you can put out a book of rules.
No, probably the best advice would be communication with the parents, because I realized 34 years of teaching in a special education environment, The more the parents and I walked the similar road, the more it helped the child. Because there will always be parents, and this, of course, is in all three of the books, there will always be parents that disagree with you and, no, I'm going to do it my way. But for them to actually come over almost like on my side and say, let's do this together, that child, and I would say 99.9%, that child would succeed when we work together. Mm-hmm.
Anthony Pettigrew wrote a book called Tears of a Nation, The Lost Scrolls of King Pettigrew. Anthony, what's the connection here between you and the scrolls?
Well, when I first created some stories, I was writing bedtime stories for my grandkids, and I was showing, just if they ever lose their way, I was creating positive stories for them to get back on track. So as I, study, got more and more into it, other people, started reading them, they started liking them, and they encouraged me to create a book about it.
You say in your notes that in order to head for the future, we have to know our past.
Correct. My kids learning their history, other kids learning our history, and we grow from it. It brings, unity.
Are there any particular stories that you talk about?
Well, my story is based off ancient Egypt times. Today, we really don't know the history about that. I just took upon myself to write something positive about the history.
For instance?
Just say African-American history, African history, as we do not know what happened back when, before Jesus or whatever, I just took it upon my time since I was so interested in, the pyramids and the Phoenix, the pharaohs. I just, wondered, was it a good soul amongst all of them?
So you're making up stories. You're imagining what
Correct.
It might have been like.
Correct, yes. It's fiction, yes.
Okay, and you're trying to find the positive. You're trying to find the good.
Yes, that's just book one.
Okay.
It's a 7-book series. We're at the streets of Chicago, amongst everybody is chaos. I hope to accomplish unity that, they can one day to, instead of speaking with their anger, they can be able to speak with their voice, to tell how they feel, to, get up and want to do the right thing and stop, putting on their butts.
So it's about bringing people together.
Correct. Started a not-for-profit called United Communities Everywhere, where we've been taking kids on trips and giving away gifts and hosting events, stuff like that, hoping I can, do these events all over America.
That's a big plan you got there.
Well, you got to start somewhere, right? In order to fix the future, you got to first, start somewhere.
Finally, we always need a little Christmas, right? And that's exactly what John McWilliams gives us in his book entitled Santa's Favorite Christmas Tales.
Okay, so Santa's Favorite Christmas Tales is the second book I did with Paige, but my third book overall. And some of the stories are based upon real-life happenings, but some of them are also totally imaginary. It's 9 short stories with a Christmas-based theme. And they were kind of an experiment. I wanted to see, could I write short stories and could I do fiction, because the 2 prior books were nonfiction. And I decided, well, I'll write short stories and see if I have enough imagination and if I can handle the dialogue. It was near Christmas time of 2014, and I wrote all of those stories probably in about a week. There's one called Christmas Eve, which I was born in Scotland, and I was raised there until I was almost 10 years old. And a man who lives in the Highlands, he lost his family because he drinks a lot, and he's an unemployed fiddler. Come Christmas Eve, and he encounters this young boy who's looking for firewood. And he says, well, come to our house. It's humble. We don't have much, but you're welcome to whatever we have. They go back, and sure, it's a dilapidated shack. They don't have any firewood. They don't have any meal for Christmas. And he goes out, and he walks down the road to the next house, offers to play some fiddle tunes in exchange for some firewood. And then he goes to the next house, and at the next house he does the same thing, only he gets firewood, and the lady gives him a bunch of stuff to eat and to drink. And he puts it on the sled, and he goes back to the first house, And when the father comes out, he's, of course, overjoyed at what he sees, and he invites him back, and he has the best Christmas he ever had. So there are many stories like that. They're pretty heartwarming. You know, one of them is about an old mission church. And every year they put out a nativity scene. But what happens is one year it gets stolen. And then one day, this old rancher who came in went to confession, and he says, well, I'm the one who took the two statues because I've been having a lot of financial problems. I thought I could sell them and raise some money. But nobody wants to take them because they know where they come from. He says, forgive me. And he says, of course we forgive you. He says, the only thing I ask of you is that you haven't been to church, so I ask you to show up to the parish every week. And would you return the two statues? He says, of course. He says, can I do it in the middle of the night so nobody knows that I'm coming, that it's me? He says, of course. So they do that, and then the following Sunday, he says, well, looks like our statues have been returned, our prayers have been answered. He takes an extra collection for the old man, but doesn't mention his name. And the old man is there in the first or second pew every week, and that's the end of the story. So everybody's happy.
This will be great coming into Christmas.
Well, yeah, and the book came out around Thanksgiving time. I'm not sure exactly when. So it wasn't really enough time to catch on. And I'm hoping that 2016 Christmas season will be better.
Hey, you got plenty of time, John, to start planning now. You can't have too much prep time for Christmas. Call the local library, local schools, local bookstores, local malls. By the time Christmas season rolls around, you'll be good to go. Just like me and Rob, right? Time for us to roll out of here, but we are coming back next week. And you should too, for another edition of the Page Publishing Book Club. Same time, same place, 710 WOR. Have a great weekend.